I'll easily prevent World War III without even setting foot in the Oval Office. I'll resolve the standoff between Russia and Ukraine, and I won't need more than a day to do it, Donald Trump has declared after claiming victory in the U.S. presidential election, promising to change the world starting January. Throughout his campaign, Trump repeatedly asserted that one of his first tasks as president would be to end the Ukraine crisis, and he's pledged to do so within 24 hours. What we're discussing is the most brutal conflict Europe has seen since World War II. After almost 3 years, the scale of devastation continues to grow. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides have been killed or wounded, and many Ukrainian cities and towns have been destroyed. Ending all this in less than a day sounds almost impossible, yet with Trump, anything could happen. So let's explore why Trump wants to end the Ukraine standoff, his plans, and how he intends to bring President Putin and President Zelensky to the negotiating table. Before explaining Trump's peace plan, let's quickly understand his reasons for wanting to end the Ukraine conflict now. One reason is his self-described isolationist stance. Unlike President Joe Biden, Trump is an isolationist who wants to reduce U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts or cut back support for Ukraine to pull America out of what he considers a mess. Biden and Kamala have dragged us into the war in Ukraine, and now they can't get out, Trump has remarked. They keep saying we'll win. But after all this time, since the conflict began, every time Zelensky visits the U.S., he reportedly leaves with billions in aid. By December last year, 48 Republicans believe the U.S. had supported Ukraine too much, a number that's only grown since then. Trump's stance aligns well with his base. That's the first reason. The second is Trump's deeper geopolitical motivation. Two of Trump's former Homeland Security officials recently published a study about his America First policy, which provides some insight into his view on Ukraine. According to them, there are 3 main reasons Trump wants to end the Ukraine conflict. First, he believes Ukraine has limited chances of winning in the current stalled situation. Second, a prolonged conflict risks strengthening the alliance between Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. We've discussed reports about North Korea potentially sending troops to Russia under a security agreement. And third, the U.S. ammunition reserves are running low, needing conservation for a possible future confrontation with China. A former advisor to Trump has warned about the consequences of providing military aid to both Israel and Ukraine, noting that the military store within the U.S. is alarmingly low. The RAND Corporation recently estimated that in a conflict, if Taiwan became a battleground, the U.S. could deplete its supplies within 3 to 4 weeks. Not only would restocking take time, but U.S. supply chains have also become overly reliant on China and Russia. These are the main reasons Trump wants to seal off the endless pit of Ukraine. Now, more importantly, let's examine how Trump intends to actually close this matter. Up to now, he's refrained from providing too many specifics about his plan. However, his advisors and allies have shared some insights. In an interview, Trump's running mate, Van, revealed 2 key elements of Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. 1. Trump wants a complete ceasefire along the current front lines, stretching approximately 1,300 kilometers, with Ukraine remaining neutral. Why? According to Van, a ceasefire along the current front lines could pave the way for establishing a demilitarized zone, possibly modeled on the heavily fortified demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, which is about 4 kilometers wide. This would mean Ukraine relinquishing around 1/5 of its territory currently under Russian control, including Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014, as well as parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. This brings us to the second point in Trump's peace plan, as shared by Van. Ukraine must remain neutral. In other words, Trump, Van, and a top ally, billionaire Elon Musk, believe Ukraine should not join NATO. This stance would avoid drawing the West into World War III, while also avoiding what Russia views as crossing its red line. The Kremlin has repeatedly stated that NATO membership for Ukraine is unacceptable. Trump has suggested a delay of at least 20 years before Ukraine's potential NATO membership is revisited. His peace plan could include enforcement mechanisms, such as deploying peacekeeping forces on the ground. However, Trump has long argued that Europe doesn't meet its own defense spending targets, implying Europe might need to pay the U.S. or use its own forces. So now you might have a clearer picture of Trump's plan, but the question remains, how will he persuade both Russia and Ukraine to go along with his ideas? For Ukraine, Trump could threaten to cut or sharply reduce military aid. Since the conflict began, the U.S. has provided Ukraine with over $70 billion in aid. Without American support, Ukraine may struggle to hold its ground against Russia unless Europe can step in significantly. Russia has been advancing faster since 2022 despite certain losses, with recent Ukrainian reports indicating clashes with around 11,000 North Korean troops stationed in Russia. For Russia, the situation is trickier. Some people may think Moscow would be pleased with Trump's plan, which would give Russia control of 20% of Ukraine's territory and ensure Ukrainian neutrality. But some experts argue that these concessions may not fully satisfy Moscow's goals. President Putin previously proposed conditions to end the conflict, including Ukraine abandoning its NATO ambitions and withdrawing from the 4 regions Russia claims. Since Russian forces don't fully control these provinces, freezing the conflict along the current front lines doesn't meet all of Russia's goals. While many European leaders and Ukrainians fear that Trump may concede too much to Russia, it's worth noting that during his first term, Trump did occasionally express friendliness toward Putin, yet he wasn't shy about taking a tough stance when needed. In fact, Trump was the first U.S. president to authorize lethal military aid to Ukraine, impose sanctions on Russian companies involved in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and order airstrikes on Russian paramilitary groups in Syria. In a recent interview, Trump mentioned he would increase support to Ukraine if Putin didn't negotiate. He declared, "I'll tell Putin, if he doesn't agree, we'll support them more than ever." Both Russia and Ukraine may not be ready to negotiate immediately, but this will likely not deter Trump from pursuing his plan. With winter approaching, perhaps this could mark the beginning of the end for the Russia-Ukraine standoff under Trump's administration. Could we hope for a reasonable resolution to this 3-year conflict? Let's discuss your thoughts in the comments below.